Dana White just shut down CNN's Laura Coates on her own show. And it was pretty clear that she was trying to get a different reaction from him. The topic at hand were the attacks on Vice President Kamala Harris regarding her being a DEI hire. Now, you all know that this specific any liberals because they feel like it's not true, especially if we're talking about Kamala Harris. But is Kamala Harris a DEI hire? Are liberals right or wrong about this? So here's an article on Time magazine from way back in March 2020. So the title reads, Joe Biden definitively vows to pick a woman vice president.
Hi, everyone. It's Kamala Harris. Each day we are seeing our rights and freedoms under attack, including the right of everyone to be who they are, love who they love, openly and with pride.
During the first one-on-one Democratic primary debate back then, Joe Biden promised that his VP would in fact be a woman and that he would appoint a black woman to the Supreme Court. By July 2020, the narrative was altered when he announced that he was only going to pick his running mate from a list of 4 black women. And remember what he said about experience? Well, Biden said that his running mate didn't even need foreign policy experience because that was his strength. Well, with all of the wars that we've seen under his term, it's pretty clear that he wasn't as strong in that aspect as he thought. And the idea is that we're bringing in an inexperienced vice president who was handpicked because she was a black woman. So does this sound like a DEI hire to you? And then, of course, there's the matter wherein some claim that Kamala Harris isn't black at all. Some say that she's Indian, others say that she's Jamaican, but then if you're Jamaican, aren't you black? Anyway, I digress. Reuters, though, has reported that Kamala Harris self-identifies as black and South Asian American. Now, you guys can do with that information what you will. But here's what Dana White had to say regarding the DEI comments against Harris.
I think people expected it to get nasty now that there is a new head of that Democratic ticket. It's the Vice President, Kamala Harris. You know, you have joked before that politics is way nastier than sports or the UFC. But what we're seeing, I mean, there's a labeling of the vice president as a DEI hire. You yourself have prided yourself on giving both men and women opportunities at your organization. What do you think of this message that attacks the race and gender of an opponent?
Yeah, I don't judge people by their politics and you know, who they vote for or any of that stuff. And listen, I don't know Kamala. She seems like she's a nice person. You know, I have nothing against her whatsoever. And like I said, I'm not political, but do I think that she is fit for the job? I do not, personally.
But it's not necessarily about the policy. It's the approach to attacking one. I mean, I know that you are very well versed in what it's like to have a matchup and people are going to go at each other for the sake of the sport and entertainment. But when it comes to attacks, particularly, I mean, there was that quote from JD Vance, who is his running mate, talking about childless cat ladies. I mean, these are not things that are in line with enveloping perhaps women into the fold, which is something you have always stood for, you say, in your sport. Why shouldn't that be the same in politics?
Yeah, well, listen, politics are the most disgusting, nasty. It's atrocious what is said in politics, and the things that are being said on one side are being said on the other side too, about Trump and about you know, his choice for vice president. It goes both ways. This isn't like, oh my God, look what's being said about Kamala. It goes both ways. They're both saying it. And like you said, it's already heated up and gotten nasty. And like you said earlier, it's only going to get nastier. That's politics. It is what it is. And it definitely goes both ways.
I don't know that it's going both ways to have the childless cat lady comment or a DEI hire. Who's calling you think that Vice President Kamala Harris is calling JD Vance a DEI hire, Dana? Come on.
But either way, she's going to say other nasty stuff about both of them. It goes both ways. And as voters, what we need to do is cut through all the BS, and you have to look at who do you think is best fit to run the country for the next 4 years. That is our job as voters.
What do you guys think about that? Do you believe all of this name calling hasn't gone both ways? Because what they're trying to paint here is that they can call Donald Trump and JD Vance and other Republicans any name that they want. But the second that this action is reciprocated, it becomes either a racist or a sexist attack.
Hi, everyone. It's Kamala Harris. Each day, we are seeing our rights and freedoms under attack, including the right of everyone to be who they are, love who they love, openly and with pride.
Now remember, Kamala Harris said that JD Vance was the best choice for Donald Trump because he's only going to be loyal to the former president and not to our country. Y'all remember that, right? She also called him a rubber stamp for Donald Trump's extreme agenda. But JD Vance snaps back and calls Kamala Harris a DEI hire, and all hell breaks loose. Even though President Joe Biden was the one who appointed her as his running mate due to her being a black woman. Now, if anything, it's the president who started all this. And JD Vance also said something else about his loyalty to the country. He says that he served in the U.S. Marine Corps and went to Iraq for our country. He says that he's also built a business here at home. He then questions Kamala Harris and asked her what she's done for the country. Do y'all hear those crickets? Anybody hear crickets?
And I'd like to ask the Vice President, what has she done to question my loyalty to this country? I served in the United States Marine Corps. I went to Iraq for this country. I built a business for this country. And my running mate took a bullet for this country. So my question to Kamala Harris is, what the hell have you done to question our loyalty to the United States of America?
And because we talked about race, have you heard about this? The Harris campaign is holding a virtual meeting that they've called White Dudes for Harris. You can look it up. That's what they called it. Now, before we get any further, what kind of backlash do you think would happen if Donald Trump had a virtual meeting called White Dudes for Trump? I'm just curious. It would be called a MAGA meeting or something to that sense. Maybe even worse. But calling Harris a DEI hire who hasn't earned the nomination of the Democratic Party is racist and sexist? I don't know. It just doesn't quite make a whole lot of sense. But of course, we have to get back to what Dana said about the job of the voters, to cut through the BS and focus on who's best to lead the country for the next 4 years. Which now brings me to the vice president and her approval ratings, because that's going to tell us the tale of the tape, right? All right, so her approval rating is sitting at what, less than 39%? Just 3 percentage points higher than President Biden's. Now, the worst part is that she's now getting the blame for the policies of Biden. A poll was recently released where people were asked if they believe that President Biden's record has now shifted over to Kamala Harris. So a whopping 68% of respondents agreed with this statement. 66% of respondents agreed that in terms of policy, there's no difference between Biden and Kamala. And this is where things might go really, really horribly wrong for the Democratic Party. There's also the matter of how respondents describe Harris. So the 5 words at the top were unqualified, unprepared, qualified, weak, and liberal. Now the term qualified came in at just 31%, almost tied with the last 2 descriptions provided. But what do you guys think about this? Do you agree that Vice President Kamala Harris is no better than Joe Biden when it comes to policies? Because policies should play a huge role if we're talking about who's going to be voted into the White House this coming November, right? Now this kind of reminds me of a previous video I did where MSNBC's Joy Reid said that you would have to be crazy not to vote for Kamala Harris as a black American. In other words, you've turned in your black card if you don't vote for Kamala Harris, which kind of also basically means that you should vote for Harris based solely on race, not her policies or her failures. You guys agree with that? Now, I cover this a lot more in detail in that video, so make sure to check that one out. Before I go, thank you for liking the video. Make sure you're still subscribed to the channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.